In yesterday's video, we spoke about a very magical trend line that Bitcoin was just so very politely tapping. And in today's video, we can see that Bitcoin has not just tapped that trend line, but it's actually exceeded that trend line, closing the day decently above at 107,379. The top side of that price action pivot's trend line was about 106,900. So that condition has essentially been validated. We can look at this as a resolved pattern right here, if you want to call this some sort of a falling channel or a falling broadening wedge, whatever the hell you want to call it. The way to do an implied move from this is the same. And in this case, we can apply that to the prospective breakout area, which was again yesterday's closure, and that would actually be pointed up towards about 113,250. Now, of course, when it comes to any sort of pattern, these things can fail at will, but because there is a very obvious and objective validation for this pattern, there's also a very objective and very obvious way to invalidate it, thus validating a trap, thus validating downside targets. But until that happens, upside's still going to be the most likely thing here. In yesterday's video, we did speak about a potential for a little bit of a pullback based upon that trend line touch. However, Bitcoin closing the day above, that's all that mattered. And so the trend, or sorry, the momentum continues to favor the short-term upside. And if we go back to yesterday's setup here on the meta signals, we can see that not only has meta signals hit those first two targets based off of this 2-hour setup right here, but the target number 3 is now looking more and more likely, to be honest. I mean, Bitcoin getting very, very close to it yesterday, to be fair. Again, this setup fired off at 101,000 US dollars, and target number 3 is at 109,250, which is, I mean, it's really, it sounds like a fucking moonshot, right? But that does have, like I said, a relatively low probability at just above 34% of the time that target being hit. But that, you know, equates to about 1 out of 3 times almost. So in this case, you know, is Bitcoin going to go for that? Well, as long as Bitcoin is again above that trend line break, well, that is actually a lot more likely. And effectively, that was the last major high that we did see on Bitcoin from the 16th of June, which was just below 109. So Bitcoin actually does hit that target and exceeds it. And especially if it plays out this implied move here, then we are going to see something of great significance to the upside, which we'll get into a little bit later in this video. But for right now, you know, just take it one step at a time, take it one level at a time. That's kind of the way that we've been doing it this whole drive, coming down from 110 all the way down to what was just below 100. Now working our way back up. In this case, yesterday was a bit of a change in bias, at least for myself, no longer necessarily looking exactly for the next lower high, but saying, hey, this one actually has a potential to really carry onwards and forwards with this breakout. So again, that target from yesterday's video hit. Now things start to change around a little bit, and let's get into actually first, if Bitcoin were to fail from here, because it's always possible, of course, what would that look like, or how would you validate that? Well, it's very, very simple. If Bitcoin did come back down below that trend line, which as of right now is 106,650, and close a daily below there, okay, now you have a fake out, now you have a trap, and you're probably looking at Bitcoin coming back down to, you know, 103, 104, stops along the way, obviously. But until that happens, yeah, upside more than likely to happen here. And again, this setup as a bit of a guide does suggest that the next major area of interest, kind of in alignment with a couple of the other things that we just did look at. So, you know, if Bitcoin continues, that's the next major area of interest. And above there, you got like 113, which is new all-time highs. So why not just send it to even more new all-time highs from there? Actually, I sent out a very, very quick chart on Bitcoin on Twitter this morning. I just want to bring it up here very, very briefly, but I wanted to do a quick study of Bitcoin positive years and when did the high of the year typically come in around for those positive closing years. And in general, whenever Bitcoin saw a positive closing year, the high came in around November or December 75% of the time. And what's even of, in my opinion, even greater significance is that during those positive closing years, Bitcoin never saw the high of the year before June. And thus far, the high of the year for Bitcoin is in May. In fact, I mean, that's Bitcoin's all-time high, right? So yeah, you know, this is starting to look more and more like it's getting ready to set up for higher. But again, that would be the line in the sand right here, about 106,600 on a daily closing base below there. I'd be expecting another downturn. I don't necessarily know if I look for Bitcoin to go lower, but I would be looking for Bitcoin at least somewhere down around like 103 to 104. Also probably get crushed yet again, but hey, nothing new there, I suppose. Anyways, where did my damn notes go? There we go. Okay, beautiful. All right, spoke about that. As long as Bitcoin doesn't close below, yeah, upside bias remains. And we can call back to this chart over here, the 2-day time frame, which had the potential for hidden bullish divergence on yesterday's video. That one has now confirmed hidden bullish divergence. And now we look for the 3-day time frame to follow through as well. The 3-day time frame right here is showing the same potential for hidden bullish divergence, but this one is not confirmed just yet because it'll close later tonight. target. That one closing in 16 hours, 31 minutes, and 1 second and counting. So, be aware of that, especially when we do see these higher term timeframes on very, very low BBWP volatility ratings right here. Daily timeframe is more or less fully crushed. 2-day timeframe is 100% crushed almost. I think literally we saw, single, like 1.5 percentile recently. 3-day timeframe, more or less the same in the single digits. 5-day timeframe is also heading down to extreme lows. So that makes me consider, what about the volatility setups? Because we haven't actually looked at these in quite some time, but they still are present, and they've actually been driving this market quite well. And what I like to typically look at for these is the 2-day time frame and the 5-day time frame. When these align in periods of low volatility, it's typically getting ready for like a pretty big move, whether it be to the upside or the downside. Then we look for the stochastic momentum also to give us a bias for where that generally comes in around. And when we look at the 2-day time frame, Bitcoin also confirmed the upside direction again on yesterday's closure, also playing out a trendline regression test over here. 103, 150 is the number to beat, at least for the next period. And if we go to the 3-day time frame, that one is also going to be freshly crossing up. At Bitcoin closes today above 108, 870. So that'd probably be like the next sort of, I guess, green light, if you will, for further upside. And the 5-day time frame, which is not closing tonight, but closing, I think, Sunday. Yeah, so this one you got to wait a while for. But this one could very well see 5-day stochastic momentum flip back up if Bitcoin finishes Sunday above 107,750. Now, obviously, we have to wait a lot of time for that, but that could drive targets much higher. Until then, I did want to just quickly go over this. Now that I recognize that the 2-day time frame also has its own formation going on right here. This one not resolved, but you can see two competing boundaries here. To the upside, it's sloping down around about 109, 250. Sounds familiar yet again. Again, that meta signals target, and then also the bottom side boundary here, which would be coming in, I guess, at current price, not super relevant, but low 100s to upper 90s. Anyways, if we were to make an implied move out of this, we could say that if Bitcoin does close above the topside boundary, again, as of current, that is 109, 250 or so, then the implied move would be headed much higher. I mean, that's basically 120, at that point. So fair enough, not bad. Anyways, that I guess is in the cards here. Bitcoin continues to just march its way upwards and onwards. And again, after reviewing this data right here, it really does make me think that the highs of this year, I mean, a lot of people looking, myself included, beforehand, around September-ish, October-ish region, but we've actually never even seen a high for Bitcoin during that month, which is rather interesting. Doesn't mean it can't happen, obviously, but if I have to bet on some month, like I'm not going to bet on something that's never happened before, obviously. Anyways, just something to kind of mull over, I do suppose. And other than that, I do want to share one last thing. Okay, so one last thing here on the meta signal setup. I should let you know that there is actually a short setup as well that just fired off. This one fired off at 107,500. Now, this one does have low probabilities in general across the board for even target number 1, which, I mean, this is still rather high probability, but compared to all of the other meta signal setups, especially the upside setups, it's rather low. And that would be 64 spot 40% of the time. And in this case, that would be that would make a target of 106, basically 106 even for Bitcoin. The second target, which is an even lower probability at 53%, would be showing about 105, 520. And target number 3, which is 43 and 37%, would be showing a target of 407, 104, 722. So just something to keep aware of. Again, those are not guarantees, obviously, but I would say, hey, look, if Bitcoin starts to come back down and close below this boundary that it just closed above, that becomes very reasonable. I think target number 3 of those honestly gets hit if something like that happens. But for right now, have to respect the trend, have to respect the momentum, have to respect the upside, I suppose. It's going to be a long day left to go. Of course, we got some economic events coming in today and tomorrow. So realistically, it's all about waiting for tomorrow's close, the weekly for CME. If Bitcoin closes anything like this, I mean, that's going to be massively fucking bullish, honestly. Like if Bitcoin closes tomorrow on CME anywhere above 105, 550, it's bullish. Like it's fucking bullish. You're going to see this thing probably make new all-time highs, maybe in July. I mean, that'd be pretty crazy. I mean, I don't think we've seen ever new all-time highs in July, but yeah, other than that, Other than that, yeah, it looks like some of those downside targets going to get canceled again, assuming that Bitcoin holds above that major pivot. So you can see how things evolve as time goes on, and how the analysis just changes over time. So in this case, yeah, something of significance did happen yesterday, and we shall monitor the situation, as the new saying goes. Other than that, I want to say a massive thank you for tuning in. As always, take care, much love, and thank you for your attention in this matter.